Hello.
Hello.
This is the Southworth Community Breakout Room. It does look like we just have two of you tonight. I was waiting. We did get RSVPs from other Southworth community members, but they haven't joined the meeting yet. So if they do, we'll definitely make sure they get in the room with us. But for now, we can just kind of kick things off. And this is meant to just be kind of a conversational space. And I'm really excited to get to know you all a little bit better and get to know Southworth's priorities and ideas and values a little bit more. As Lauren and Hadley were kind of sharing, we wanted to break up this session by community just because there are such different priorities and issues important to the different communities. So it's important to us to really hear from each community member individually and each CAG member. And this kind of is a nice way to do that and just kind of also get to know one another and build some community within the CAG. And I know we've heard, over the last several years, we've heard from a lot of your community members through different avenues, email and planning conversations and other large group conversations, but there hasn't been an opportunity for the CAG members that represent the Southworth area to kind of get together and share from your perspective in this setting. So that's one of the things that we're hoping to do tonight. And this is also just an important timing of, you all have hopefully looked at the purpose and need statement and can see what it reflects. And before we move forward with moving into developing our the screening criteria and alternatives, we really want to make sure that Southworth's values are reflected in the purpose and need and can be reflected in the screening and alternative development process. So I am not an engineer and I'm not, haven't been part of the Washington State Ferries team for long, so I won't be able to answer all of your questions if you have them, but we can call someone in from the project team if we need to, if there is like an urgent question or something that you really want to get to the root of, we can bring someone in from the project team. And then lastly, so everyone's kind of doing the same thing. The Fauntleroy and the Vashon groups are also gathering to discuss, and we're all going to report out at the end. So we have about 20 minutes to talk, and then I'm hoping one of you, if you feel comfortable taking notes and reporting out, that one of you could do that. Is that something, Fletcher or Larry, you're feeling excited about?
I can, but I need to grab a notepad.
No problem.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to have Larry do it.
Great.
We do.
We'll let Larry grab his pen and paper.
Yeah. But my light here is blinding.
Okay. Thanks, Larry.
No problem.
So I know I'm a new face to you two, and before we get started, just want to introduce myself a little bit more, and maybe I can hear a little bit about the two of you, and kind of why you're here. So how you became a CAG member, and I'll share kind of why I'm interested in this process. and then we can get started with some of the questions that we've got for you. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Cool. So my name's Haley Nolan, and like I said at the top of the meeting, I'm supporting community engagement and outreach for the Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal project. And this is the first time that I've been part of a planning and environmental linkages process, so the PEL process, which is a new process, and it's really a really cool one to be a part of because it just really prioritizes involving community perspectives from the very beginning. So that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to be part of this project, and also to get to work with community members directly, and just kind of to hear all of the ways that your feedback is directly impacting how the project develops. So Fletcher, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Fletcher Sandbeck. I live in Manchester, which my shirt reflects. But yeah. So anyway, nice thing about Manchester, if you know this side, is that we can see Seattle from here. So that's kind of cool. So but yeah, I generally I've been riding the ferry a long time, and in the last couple of years, generally ride it. A lot to kind of social events, and I do web design at my house, so I'm mostly traveling to Seattle like for some specific purpose. And then I try to take the bus. It's been a little weird. This last year has thrown my general schedule out of whack. But yeah, so to me, it's important. Like transit connections are important, and just reliable service. And but
cool, thanks. Larry?
Yeah, hi, I'm Larry Harla, and I'm actually not too far from Manchester. I'm just up the hill, kind of on Woods Road area. I live on a rural property there, and so kind of same general area. I've in the past commuted, via Southworth to Fauntleroy. So these days I work for the city of Tacoma. I'm actually a planner also. I'm a principal planner for city of Tacoma. And, really for me, one of the reasons I got involved, it's important. I believe in transit too, professionally. I have family, kids. It's really important for our economy. It's important for our environment. And I think that one of the differences, between the three communities, we really have divergent interests. Of course, strong overlap, strong shared interests, but very divergent. I think Kitsap, you have a lot of working families. This is really, an equity issue, honestly. You have Kitsap County, which tends to be, younger working families, a lot of military connection, a lot of second income families. A lot of folks using vanpool, a lot of folks being really responsible in how they commute. And then you have, more affluent communities on Vashon and in particularly Fauntleroy that just engage with this entire project very differently. And one thing that I've been a bit concerned about so far, it's that we don't have, I know that everybody's done, extremely good due diligence to try to reach out and get all voices heard. But the reality is Kitsap so far, I don't think has had as strong of a voice from the folks who really use the ferry, the folks who are, in the van pools, those folks are busy. Right now they're still at work, and a lot of these folks are, these are folks that work at CAG. These are folks who maybe are working multiple jobs. These are, again, members of our military. And these are people who probably we're going to get, have quite a bit of a challenge to get their voices heard. And the folks who we hear in the process so far are, people who, own property, people who have the luxury of, kind of evenings off and, maybe better access to technology and just generally better understanding of how these processes work and sort of network connections to kind of entice them or alert them, to the process in general. And so, not to be long-winded about that, but that's something, seeing the comments so far, I mean, I see a lot of, hey, let's relocate the dock. I don't like how the dock affects my, really nice home in my really nice affluent area. And I'd really like to see us move this dock out of my nice affluent area, and really not very much consideration for, the working folks who have to use this to earn a living, to eat. And then the rest of the state. I mean, this is a state facility. It's paid for by the taxpayers of the entire state, not just, folks in Fauntleroy or Vashon or even in Kitsap. And so it is a vital link, in the state's transportation network that has, all sorts of benefit to the rest of the state. And there's an element to that too. I would love to hear, how maybe even some, voices even maybe a little outside of the area. But so far, that's my only observation. I think the only other, everything else seems to be really well covered. Everybody's, I find myself kind of nodding at a lot of the documents and the comments from the fellow CAG members. I think seem to be doing a really good job.
Yeah, well, I think from my point of view, like the it's like the needs, if outline a lot of my wish list for the dock, which is just like the wish list is just that it works really efficiently. And so the idea of having an entire boat's worth of cars on the dock, those kind of things are overhead loading of passengers, pedestrians and that sort of thing would really make the dock more efficient. And so yeah, I mean, to some extent, it's just kind of like if we executed the needs, I feel like I'd be fairly happy. But
Right.
and then there's just one comment which I want to respond to. Like I want to send in a comment for a rebuttal of it, possibly by email, but it's just the notion that the dock is very efficient except for the 4 hours of the day that it isn't efficient. It's like, oh yeah, it's just like the freeway, right? I mean, if you go at 2 in the morning, it's wide open. It's like, but of course, most people are on the freeway at rush hour, just
Yeah.
as most people are trying to ride the ferry, from whatever the hours are, 3 to 5 or whatever, when it's most crowded. So anyway, so yeah, so just kind of eliminating the hours when it's really crowded and saying it's on time 18 hours of the day.
Right.
Sure. Yes, I ride. I've been on the 1140 boat. It's very prompt. But
Okay, I love this. I really appreciate both of your comments, and just thanks for sharing some background with me right off the bat.
Yep.
And we've already kind of started to get into this, but I just want to kind of reiterate the types of comments and things that we've heard from the Southworth community as these key issues. And I want to hear what you all think, like if these are being kind of reflected to us as the top key issues, like, is that still accurate? Are there things that we're missing? Is this still relevant? So what I've got down here is the balance of service between Vashon and Southworth, and maybe like schedules favoring Southworth or favoring Vashon, the length in crossing time, and then constraints, operational constraints. So Fletcher, you kind of already started mentioning that, and then the growth in Kitsap County. So there's a lot of new families moving to Kitsap County. Larry, you were mentioning there's just the shifting demographics, and what does that mean for ferry service, and how are people being impacted? So hearing those, and I can put those in the chat if you want.
One thing to add to that I didn't mention that I think is that you just sparked my memory with Alex's comment there. I think that a lot of people, a lot of commenters have this notion that, this is it's a through pass to Seattle, right? Everybody rides this ferry and they go right to Seattle, to that downtown, financial core and they're, these are like, I don't know, wealthy corporate attorneys or something who are taking the ferry and like just burdening their community. Really, I think that the picture of, a lot of folks are not going to Seattle. A lot of folks are going to other destinations. And it does get into, hopefully I agree with the comment up front, like, hey, can we take some of these off the table, like move the dock kind of thing. But I think that does, in the entire conversation, play a role as far as where are folks going, where are folks coming from, and how, and are we really considering, I agree very much about that 4-hour kind of the bottlenecks and the pain points and a focus on that. Are there things that can be done? And this is something I'm on the Ferry Advisory Council too for Kitsap County, for Southworth. And this is something we've talked about at our meetings too. I know Washington State Ferry was in the process of doing like a big master plan and trying to evaluate where, transit, how transit utilization was occurring and that sort of thing. And I understand that kind of got in a bit of a tailspin just due to COVID. And I've asked at a couple of meetings, like, is that available? Do we know exactly where full ridership is going? How many band pools are using, a service today? Do we have projection on, is that going to grow? Those sorts of things I think would be really, they would help bolster. Particularly some of the things that Fletcher just said, as far as, some of these capacity and, pain point easing measures that are being called for in the design. And I just think that we need to, have as much I think there's plenty of justification there. I just think data would be nice around some of that, like what do we, pedestrian ridership, that sort of thing. For reconfiguration of loading and just, capacity, even just 5-10 years down the road, let alone very long term, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. What about these other key issues? Do those still feel like the main ones that matter most to your community?
I think there are some, like the schedule changed somewhat, and I feel like in some ways it's like it tends to be that the ferry seems to be, it tends to go to Fauntleroy and then come over to Southworth. So it's like the south, and then it goes back. It goes Fauntleroy, Vashon, Southworth, Vashon, Fauntleroy, right? And so it's like you're just always kind of doing that extra stop, and then but the schedule did change somewhat recently, though. So I'm not sure. I feel like there were a few more direct routes to Southworth added, but I don't know. We've been on the 2-boat schedule for so long too.
Right.
That's kind of confusing right now, but yeah, it's certainly in the past. It's like when I ride the ferry a lot, it feels like they, they'll cancel runs to Southworth, and keep Vashon going. But I'm also, I'm a bit of a realist. It's like people in Vashon are literally on an island, as well.
Right.
So
they are, but they do have that Tacoma connection, and I've frequently heard people as the advisory committee membership, we hear comment from public. The reality is, if you have to get to work in, over in, SeaTac or somewhere, and you live in Kitsap, and the ferry gets canceled, it's a long detour, a long drive to where, Vashon, obviously, if both ferries are canceled, yes, those people are landlocked and they may be in real trouble, right? But it's often not the case. Often that ferry down at Tacoma is still running. It's actually less inconvenient for them. And they do have that secondary linkage potentially. And then another thing too that I don't see being brought up that much so far, it's the fast ferry service, both King County and Kitsap Fast Ferry. And in our meetings, in our advisory council meetings, I know that we've heard that that's been very helpful, especially with some of the boat cancellations due to the COVID problems. So that's another thing I'd like to get some more information on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's a comment in the comments. We're warned here. We have 45 seconds, but there's a comment about whether prioritizing the Southworth dock changes. It's like our Southworth dock changes being put off, kind of, because for the fast ferry, those would be more beneficial than these changes. But I don't know. This process can speak to to that and all. But
Yeah. And this is just not nearly enough time. I've been taking notes, but there's, so much more to get into, and I'm realizing we have 10 seconds left, which is really crazy. So sorry to cut this short, and I hope we can talk more soon.